Every family deals with a tragedy, like the massacre of the 4 University of Idaho students, in a different way. It does seem like people like us, the true crime community, we have lots of opinions, and we like to share them. We all have different ways of viewing how people react to them. Many times, we voice these opinions and preface the opinions by saying, well, if it were me, this is how I would behave. And that justifies the opinion. I think it's important to note, however, that just because we feel we would behave a certain way isn't necessarily the right reason. It isn't the reason we should give to justify saying another person's actions are good or bad, are moral, immoral, ethical, unethical. You see, we're not actually that person, are we? We're not actually in that person's shoes. We aren't Stacy Chapin. We aren't Steve Gonsalves, are we? We like to imagine, oh, but if I were them. But the reality is, we aren't them. Some people, unfortunately, have had horrific things happen to them and their family, maybe even had a loved one brutally murdered. But even those people aren't paracriminal, aren't Benjamin Mogan. They aren't the Chapins, the Gonsalveses, are they? You see, unless we're actually walking in that person's shoes, how are we to judge their actions? It's one of the things, to be honest, that has concerned me the most when I listen to any true crime commentator. It's one of the things I try to keep myself from doing. And I'm not passing judgment on people who are passing judgment. I'm simply making an observation, and that is, it says it in the Bible, and although I'm not someone who's a Bible thumper, I guess I'll say, I do think there's a lot of wisdom that Christianity offers. Let he without sin cast the first stone, right? So casting all of these stones, casting all of this judgment on someone without first looking inside of ourselves, that can be a dangerous thing. The Chapins, in my opinion, have stayed above the fray. This is a family that is really elected to take the high road in this situation. And I've heard all the commentary. I've heard all of the theories. I've heard the negatives about what people think about the Chapins, why they behave the way that they do. But if we just look at it for what it is, this is a family that lost a son, and they're trying to do something positive and move forward as best they can. Ethan Smile Foundation. If you haven't looked at the page, it's very heartwarming. They have some merchandise. Portions of it go to his foundation. They do have the scholarship to benefit people who go to the University of Idaho. We know about the tulips. Tulips actually happen to be my favorite flower. So I think I might order some tulips this year. One of the things they have on the foundation page, though, is highlighting people. They're asking people to send in their memories, people who knew Ethan. Send in photos and send in some memories. So I'm just going to read from one. It's called Smile Spotlight. This is number 31 from Tess McFarlane. Ethan embodied warmth, which I believe everyone already knows, but his warmth was made through the genuine love he had for everyone and everything. I can confidently say that Ethan taught me the version of love that I know and connect to today. Growing up, I always knew that the way my immediate family expressed their love was slightly different than how I wanted to show mine, but it wasn't until I was with all of my cousins that I knew what that slight difference was. My dad, mom, and sister show their love through quality time and acts of service, but not in extremely overt ways, which is totally okay. But when I was with Ethan, he would run up to me, give me the biggest hug, and announce his love. And Ethan would do that for everything. If he loved a song, he would play it loudly and sing at the top of his lungs. Or if he loved a food, he would eat it every day. The way he viewed life was refreshing. I remember sitting in the back seat of his Jeep, just watching him soak up the world, and I swear the world felt the same way about him. It felt like the air would quiet down every time Ethan would speak, and the trees would dance when Ethan would. Ethan and the world were one and the same. He had a type of love that made the world grow and shrink at the same time. His openness completely changed the way I approached people and things. I owe Ethan so much, but whenever I look at the trees or hear the wind slow, I think of his smile and how he would open his arms when he saw me. I love you, E. There are many funny memories of Ethan. Waking me up in the middle of the night with a margarita after getting drunk with my dad, or only eating chicken fingers after getting food poisoning. Still, one of my earliest ones was at Grandpa's funeral. I was overwhelmed and confused, and I remember Ethan coming up to me, giving me a big hug, and saying he would be with me the whole time. The one word I would use to describe Ethan is warmth. This is so nice, right? For family to be able to hear these sort of stories from people who knew Ethan, who spent time with him. And if you go to this page, you can also get to know Ethan better. He was a real person. This is a real family. And they lost their son in a very brutal way. And this is how they're dealing with it. And everyone deals with it in their own way. Whether we like it, whether we think it's the right way or not, whether we think we would do it that way or not. We really don't know how we would do it, do we? And hopefully we never have to find out. So what got me thinking about this was Stacy Chapin and her strength, her fortitude throughout all of this. I saw an article. She's been interviewed recently. The Chapins don't really pop up in the news very often regarding this horrible tragedy. They're sort of like the other family that's in the news. The Gonzalez family is in the news a lot. They have a completely different position than the Chapins. And like the Chapins, they're criticized heavily for the position that they take. But the Mogans, the Kernodles, they're largely absent from the process. Of course, we had Kara Kernodle around for a while. She was on the YouTube true crime community scene. She was on News Nation, I believe. And now she's presumably in prison, I think. But Madison Mogen's parents, step-parents, they've been largely behind the scenes, absent. Gonzalez family has been their spokesperson for the most part. And so the Chapins and the Gonsalveses are the ones we hear the most about. And it is interesting to watch how different these two families handle this tragedy. And to be fair, there is no right or wrong way to handle this. Everyone does seem to have an opinion. But like I said before, we aren't them, right? We don't know what it feels like to be them, to experience what they've experienced. And I'm sure we don't want to know what that feels like. So Stacy Chapin was recently interviewed. And I'm just going to read a little bit about that interview here. In November of 2022, Stacy Chapin learned she lost her son, Ethan, forever. Ethan was one of 3 other University of Idaho students who were brutally murdered in their off-campus house while they slept. I think that's debatable, right? His girlfriend, Xana, and roommates Madison and Kaylee were the other victims. We've been, and our kids have been, to hell and back. But we're definitely on the other side of this thing, Stacy Chapin said. That's a stark difference from where the Gonsalves family sits right now. And I find that really interesting, just in terms of how we as people deal with things, right? Fox 13 sat down with Chapin on Thursday as she wore a bracelet with Ethan's name. The Skagit County mom also has a tattoo etched in Ethan's handwriting from a note he wrote years ago. They say you spend 80% of your time with your child by the time they turn 18. And I thought to myself, I've won the lottery because I got 80% of his time, Chapin said. I would be lying if I didn't say there are some moments that are hard, but for the most part, I think we're doing exceptionally well. Earlier this month, Chapin was back in Moscow, Idaho, for the University Parents Weekend. It's the city where 2 of her children currently attend college, and where another one of her kids spent his last moments. That university in the town of Moscow, and the kids that go to the school there, and the police department, we have felt so much love from there and the support, Chapin said. Jim and I are so proud of the strength that we see in Maisie and Hunter. It's one thing for me to talk about what it's like to lose a son, but as a triplet sibling, I honestly can't imagine. I can't speak to what must be like for them, but my gosh, they're doing so well. They're going to graduate on time. They're happy, Chapin said. You walk away from it and think, we're going to be okay, and so are the kids. It's just so interesting the way she speaks. She's clearly a very optimistic person. She is, looking at the glass half full, right? She's looking at it from the perspective that, she got to spend a lot of time with him while he was here. The whole 80% of the time spent with kids by the time they're 18, quote, right? And then she sort of shifts to, even though she's a mom, the fact that he has triplet siblings, it must be really hard for them. That's an empathetic statement to make. She also talks about how proud she is of her children for sticking with school, going right back to school, the very school where her son lost his life, and that they're on time, that they're graduating on time. And then just sort of reaffirms that everything's okay. While the Chapins put the pieces of their lives back together and carry on, the court proceedings for the man charged in connection to the 4 murders is still ongoing, but no trial date has been set. It's not a time I spend, it's not a place I spend much time thinking about. I don't spend much time thinking about him. We made a decision. She's referencing Brian Koberger here. We made a decision to not let it impact our family. We can't change the outcome. We can't bring Ethan back. This is a woman who is not vindictive, clearly. She's not vindictive. And she doesn't want any part of this trial. And she's just going to let law enforcement and the courts and God handle it, apparently. She's going to just have faith that that's how it's going to work out. That's how it's going to be handled. And again, this is in stark contrast to the Gonsalves family, who's very involved in this, who has not had any closure and won't have any closure until this goes to trial, and feels victimized and traumatized by the fact that it's taking a long time. This is not a judgment on either family. I'm simply making an observation of how different it is. And people judge both of these families for the way they handle this. You know, people heavily criticize the Gonsalves family for being so involved, for being upset that the trial hasn't been set yet, for demanding justice, for presuming Brian Koberger's guilt, right? And then people judge the Chapins for aligning with the university, for seemingly not caring about the outcome, for seemingly not caring that the house was torn down or the evidence. Well, which is it? They're both to blame. They both should be judged harshly. Both families lost children in the most brutal fashion. I just think it's something that people should consider when they're criticizing these families, right? I think we should really just step back and think about what we're really criticizing when we're talking about these families that lost kids this way. As the tulips bloom across Washington for Chapin, it's another reminder of her son. A blend named Ethan's Smile was created in his honor. Sometimes it checks you a little bit. It's a reminder that Ethan is in fact gone. But the outpouring of support, it's been pretty neat to watch it grow, Chapin said. We will come out of this on top. In addition to the tulips, the Ethan Smile Foundation provides scholarships to help people follow their dreams. The foundation is getting ready to award their first round of scholarships, which will give upwards of $50,000 and offer as many as 25 scholarships, according to Chapin. So, again, just wanted to read what the other family that's been more vocal. She's vocal, but not in the same way as the Gonsalveses, and I find it. I think she's a very interesting woman. I mean, she's the matriarch of the family. She's clearly a very strong woman. She speaks for the family. You know, her husband Jim is the quiet one. He's happy to let her speak. She's been criticized for that as well, which, you know, that's their marriage. That's not our business. I admire the way she's handled the whole thing, to be honest. And after this, I'm just going to show a couple clips. She went to CrimeCon, and honestly, I think it was awesome. People criticized her for that as well. They said, oh, that's, you know, they thought it was weird or tacky or something. Well, her son had died, and she knew that at CrimeCon there was going to be a bunch of people like us who are on YouTube or podcasters or news people who talk about true crime. Some people who do it in ways that maybe aren't ethical or maybe aren't the nicest. And she thought to herself, they're talking about my son. So I want to go and see what this is all about. This is what I'm imagining. I'm doing what I said isn't a good thing to do, right? What would I do in her shoes? Only I'm saying, I get it, right? I get that. I'm not criticizing her for it. I kind of understand it. Maybe you could understand it if you think of it that way. I don't think it's weird at all that she showed up at CrimeCon. She wants to know, what are all of these people doing? Why are they so fascinated with this stuff? So she showed up, and she stood up, and she said something. And I think that guy, that forensic professor, probably almost shit his pants when she stood up and said, I'm Stacy Chapin. So you'll see a clip of that after I'm done talking here. And then there's another clip of an interview that she did after that I really love, where she talks about what she thinks about all of us. And I like that one too. That's the one where she calls us, quote, true crime participants. And that's also interesting. So just wanted to do a little tribute to the Chapin family and also to Ethan Chapin, and just show you what they've been up to. And if you haven't, you really should go to the ethansmile.org. If you look at the tributes that have been made, there's a lot of people that we've looked into over the past, what's it been, almost 2 years, year and a half. Hunter Johnson, Jasmine Kernodle, some of his frat brothers. They talk about Ethan. They post pictures. And they tell stories about Ethan. And it's really, really nice. So that's it, guys. Hope you stay for a couple more minutes and watch Stacy Chapin. It's pretty cool. Let me know what you think. Until next time.
Stacy Chapin, and I'm Ethan's mom. And I actually didn't sit through it because it's too hard to watch, but I do want all of you to know that these were 4 of the greatest kids, and that all of the great things that you read about them is legitimately true. And I can speak on behalf of my own son, who was an incredible human, and we miss him all terribly. But it's a very strange situation to be. I'm not a true crime follower, but I am now thrust into the epicenter of something that has become pretty incredible. But anyways, don't forget these kids. I did watch the beginning where you spoke a little bit on behalf of all 4 kids, and they're amazing. They were amazing, amazing kids in the prime of their life. So that's all. Thank you.
An announcer, and there was a live mic, and I thought, well, here's my chance. So I just said, I have something to say. And I said, my name is Stacy Chapin, and my son was Ethan. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. People who are fascinated by true crime, it's an entertainment for them. I mean, and I know that there's people who genuinely, feel a calling to maybe help. And we did it in this case. They released the white car. If you've seen this car, we have turned a nation into potential true crime participants. But there is a huge level of entertainment in it, and I just needed to say that your entertainment is our family's life. And I think it resonated with people, and then I felt this calling a little bit to make sure that I reminded people that there's real families behind